Hello and welcome to the sixth installment of RPG Design Talk. Today I'm joined by Greg Lambert of Dueling Dragon Adventure. Greg and Dueling Dragon Adventure put out a few products already. They put out like a setting for D&D 5e called Chronicle of Iris, and they also put out and some supplement for that setting, and they also put out a supplement for Castle and Crusade called Wilderkin. And
yes.
So welcome for joining me, Greg. Sorry. The first question I always ask my guests is, what was the impetus for getting out there and putting something out? Like, what was the little push that got you from having an idea, playing the game, to saying, you know what, I want to produce something, I want to put my creation out in the world?
Well, thanks for having me on, first of all. But what's that music at the beginning of your clip? Is that like some dungeon synth? What is that?
It's something I put out together, like like just some music I made to have an intro.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I started playing D&D like a long time ago, back in the 90s, second edition. So I'm not as super old school as some other people who have been playing since the 70s or whatever. But we played a lot, and we always had a very high fantasy, kind of Tolkien-esque setting that we enjoyed. And we went a really long time without playing any RPGs at all. I'd say like 15 or 16 years, me and my best friends, until eventually we got hit with the COVID lockdown. And we were bored, and we decided to pick up D&D again. So this was a few years ago, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And we started playing D&D again with the old setting that I had from high school, which was, 25 years ago at that point, which was Iris. Just a setting that we whipped up together. And we had a great time. And this campaign that I ran lasted like all summer. And, during COVID lockdown, probably shouldn't have been together like playing D&D, but whatever. I don't care about that. And we had such a good time that we're like, well, we have the technology, and my co-author Frank Mills is very talented at things like digital production. He knows Adobe Creative Cloud and stuff like that. And why don't we just make the Iris setting into something that other people can enjoy? So that's what we did. And that was just the first thought that came into our head was, we have a setting that I don't know anybody who doesn't like it. Everyone thinks it's cool. It's like a combination of Dragonlance, Tolkien, all the fantasy movies. It feels like you're playing in an 80s fantasy movie like The Dark Crystal or Willow or something like that. It has the retro kind of feel. And when we look at 5th edition, it doesn't have a whole lot of that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, maybe we can bring that type of, old school fantasy flavor to D&D. So we started putting together the setting as like a complete book, and we did a Kickstarter that was really successful for some reason. Even though we didn't have a following at all, no one knew who we were. I wasn't on Twitter, wasn't on social media at all. And we ended up coming out with a setting book. So we just keep churning out stuff ever since then. But that was our first thought was, I don't see anything like this in 5th edition. I guess Forgotten Realms is not quite what we're looking for, so we wanted to put it out there.
That's interesting, because it's always like I'm having those talks because I want to, for people that listening that want to put something out, to be inspired by that. And the fact that you didn't have following, you came like you were just like people enjoying the game. enjoying the setting that you made for yourself, and I went, say, you know what, I want to share that for the world. And you went to Kickstarter and had success with that. Do you want to talk about the experience of dealing with Kickstarter, putting the campaign together, lesson you learned, mistake you made, something that somebody else could learn from?
Yeah, so probably took us about 8 months to type our setting book, which is 360 pages long. And our whole goal from the very beginning was to make it as kind of not OSR. I wouldn't definitely not call it OSR, but I wanted to have the old school 80s fantasy feel with everything that we did. So we got the book cover was, we made it look like an 80s fantasy movie poster. We got artists filled the whole book with like old school kind of looking art that some of it is a little cartoony. We wanted to have almost like a Jim Henson feel sometimes, you know? And when we decided to do the Kickstarter, you know, the number one questions we had to ask ourselves were, what makes this setting worthy of someone to spend money for us on Kickstarter? You know, because there's a lot of D&D settings out there, a ton of fantasy settings, a ton of D&D supplements. So we didn't know too much about 5th edition at the time. Like we were kind of new to it. We had no idea that there was this whole like culture war, zeitgeist, whatever. Like had no clue about any of that stuff. We were totally fresh coming back and playing the game for 20 years, you know? So we had to ask ourselves that question. And I think we had the right answers. Like, well, look, there must be people out there who are wanting to play in some kind of old school style setting that don't have the time to make the setting for themselves. I know people love to make settings for themselves. You know, that's part of the fun of being a DM. But at that time, Wizards of the Coast had not released any kind of Dragonlance product. And there certainly wasn't any kind of Lord of the Rings book or anything like that for 5th edition at the time. So we launched a Kickstarter, and we did about 30 days of marketing before the Kickstarter went live. And my co-author put together for us a trailer showing off our artwork and what everything was about. It's on my YouTube channel if anyone wants to go back and look at our old trailers.
The links are down below for the YouTube channel and your products in the description.
Cool. And I really don't, I don't know how it was so successful. I guess because 5th edition was really, really popular at the time, which was like late 2020. It still hadn't like gone downhill completely with Wizards of the Coast and all that. So I guess anybody who's looking for 5th edition on, I did pay for marketing. I paid for Facebook ad and YouTube ad, Google ad. So that was a big help in trying to get more people driven to the Kickstarter campaign.
Oh, that's interesting. You said that because other guests that I had in the past, some of them tried the Facebook ad, said that was a waste of money. I don't know if other people tried the YouTube ad, but for you, you found that did drive some engagement? Oh,
definitely. The YouTube ad was for our trailer. And so I would say number one thing you want, besides having a good answer to that question, why am I doing this and why would anyone buy it? You know, just the basic questions. Gotta have a good trailer, I think, for Kickstarter. You have to have it sleek, awesome. It needs to show off what you're about. Maybe some good music. Now, a lot of people like to have like a, hi, my name is Greg and I'm the creator type of trailer where they just talk about it. But we didn't do that. We wanted to have like a movie type of trailer. And that helped a lot. And I think the trailer really helped to drive a lot of engagement for the Kickstarter.
Well, we got like a insert name here. Say the trailer was great, and you went with something like more like a narrator presenting the world.
Yeah,
they had a very primitive fantasy sword and sorcery vibe to the setting. Yeah.
Yeah, and that YouTube ad for our very first trailer got like 15,000 views on YouTube just from the ad. Like if I didn't have the ad, nobody would have seen it probably. And then of course it goes to the Kickstarter when you click on it. So I think that's probably a good reason for the success. And then I started to get into Twitter, and I didn't have a Twitter account, but I started one up, and I just started posting, hey, this is the Chronicles of Iris. We do this, this, and this. And I posted every day and posted artwork and constantly linking TTRPGs and D&D, like the hashtag. And it turned out to be pretty good. But
yeah,
go ahead.
No, as I was asking, you think the Twitter engagement, because this is also something that Paddy's told me about last week, like Twitter engagement being important, getting out there, being active, showing people that you are working and on the project, and it's not going to be dead in the water. You think that played also a big role in there?
Yeah, definitely. One of my buddies, Pulp Hummock, who's doing Forgotten Gods of the North, I think, which is a big OSR mega dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
He did marketing for 60 days before he launched it. No, 90. He did marketing for 3 months before he launched his Kickstarter. And he said that was very important. Like, you have to constantly be like trying to generate interest in the idea and interest in the product before you launch. I did 30 days, but we didn't really know what we were doing at all. And so, I guess I can segue into some of the mistakes we made, right, for the Kickstarter.
Yeah. And you mentioned working with a co-author. That's the term you use? Yeah.
His name is Frank.
His name is Frank. You're the public face of the project, from what I understand, because I see you on show and stuff like that. I don't think I ever seen Frank, or if I did, maybe I didn't know it was him.
No, yeah. Without him, I wouldn't be able to do anything, because he doesn't write it. I do all the writing and proofreading and creating like classes and stat blocks and all the game design stuff. And he is the technical guy. He does all the book layout. He creates graphics in Adobe Illustrator. He does music. He does the videos. He does like anything technical. He does it all. And so he's like a professional guy, a multi-talented guy. So that's why, we were able to have good videos and stuff, was because of him mainly. And I didn't have to pay him. So that was nice.
Yeah, that was a question I had, because like collaboration, like I wanted to know like how do you share tasks? So you're the writing guy, and he's doing like all the layout and publishing like that, because that's a big part nowadays. And you mentioned at the start that technology, the fact that now it's possible through technology for somebody like that is not a big house to publish something, was also part of the what give you the push to start, right?
Yeah, that was it. We probably, if we had the initiative, we could have made a book a long time ago with Adobe PageMaker or whatever the thing was, like 20 years ago. But it's not the same. They wouldn't have had Kickstarter, wouldn't have had YouTube, like the major ad campaigns that you can do on YouTube now. Mm-hmm. The stuff to make the videos that wouldn't have been there. Easy access to artists. You can go on ArtStation. I can go find like all kinds of artists that anybody I want, I can go find it immediately like that. And I find artists who are good but cheap. You couldn't do that a long time ago. You just had to go with what you could get. But now I have a lot of choices, and so that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, this is something I'd like to talk about, the hiring of artists as well. So you said you went to ArtStation. That's the site you mentioned?
I go to ArtStation a lot, or I did, and now I've built up kind of a core group of artists that have been working with me for years. But I went to ArtStation, and I did a little DeviantArt, not a whole lot of DeviantArt, because DeviantArt kind of sucks.
Already.
And what you don't want to do, this is the number one thing you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. You don't want to go on Twitter with your fantasy account or whatever you're trying to do for your business and be like, I'm looking for an artist that can draw dragons. You're going to get the most garbage. Like, you are going to get flooded with scammers and people who are just pasting clip art that they found off the internet and like all this like total trash. Like, do not do that. Big mistake. Another mistake is going to Reddit. Do not go to Reddit for anything. Reddit sucks. You'll go on there and you'll make a thread on Reddit on our fantasy or whatever, or fantasy artists, and be like, I'm looking for a fantasy artist. You're going to get blown up with all these like clowns that are just terrible, terrible art. And then you feel bad because you have to tell them that their stuff sucks. And like, you have to kind of let them off gently. Oh, no, thank you. We're not looking for that style right now. And it's like, ugh, I don't ever want to do that again. So what I did was I went to ArtStation and I would think of a topic that fit a piece of art that I knew that I wanted. Mm-hmm. So we have some villains in the story who are like the Skeksis from the Dark Crystal. And so I would be like, ArtStation, I would search for Dark Crystal Skeksis and find some artists that looked like they knew what they were doing when they're illustrating this type of stuff. And I would look for the artists who were not professional. So I would filter out all the professionals, and I would look for talented looking artists who did not have a big following. Let's say they had less than 200 followers, maybe even less than 100, which is pretty low on ArtStation. Usually you get in the thousands. And that's who I would reach out to, because that's what you want to find. You want to find artists who don't have a big following, are eager to work. They will be most likely to be eager to work with you, and they won't be expensive. And then you can get them in your pocket and you can work with them for all your projects, hopefully. And that, I don't have any artists that I have not worked with, in the past 3 years. The ones I found for the first book, I've been working with all of our books since then.
So you kind of build like a stable of artists.
That's right, pretty much.
Yeah. And at what point did you start approaching those artists? Because like oftentimes people do the Kickstarter to buy for the art, but you also need to have some art to put your Kickstarter together. So What was the process there? Like, how did you find the right balance because art, we know, is expensive.
It is. Came out of my own pocket. Mm-hmm. That's a problem that a lot of creators are probably going to face. Is like, do you have an extra $2,000 to go ahead and spend on art right now? Most people will say no. And I didn't really have it either, but I made it happen. Like I sold some video games. I sold some Magic cards. I got a loan. I took out a loan from the bank to help me a little bit get started. So I do it I do it an opposite way from what everyone says. Most people say, write the book first and then get the art. That's what everyone's advice is. And that is good advice. I can't argue with that advice. But I don't do it that way, and I don't do it that way. I get a lot of art first for this reason. First of all, artists are the most unreliable part of any project. Right? So you might get an artist that agrees to work on it, and you put in some money to him, you pay a down payment, and they don't have anything for you for 6 months. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've wasted 6 months of your time. All right, so that's why I like to get into the artwork early on. And then once you have some good pieces of art early on, you can put together the trailer, you can share it on Twitter, social media, do some lore pieces and talk about the lore and add some artwork to it, and that'll get people excited. So that's why I like to do art, at least a good chunk of the artwork first before I write the book.
And I guess that's also like is a big part of which artists you keep as part of your stable. Like, do you deliver on time? Because that's something that John Torres, when we had it on the show, talked about on his side as an artist. Do your work on time and deliver when you say you're going to deliver.
Exactly, but it's a two-way street. You can't. I pay my artist, right? You never want to tell an artist, oh, I'll pay you after on the Kickstarter. Why don't you do this art for me? And then if the Kickstarter is successful, I'll pay you. No. You don't want to do that. You need to pay your artist. You need to pay him up front. You need to be professional about it. Pay half down if that's what they require. That's what I always do. Half down, half on completion. Mm-hmm. I know John had some trouble with some people who who did not pay him for months and months and months.
Yep.
And that's a big problem. You don't want to do that. And you definitely don't want to offer to, okay, I don't have any money for you, but if you make this art, I'll pay you an exposure. Your art will be on our book and you'll get an exposure. You don't want to, that's unprofessional. You can't do that.
There's something I wanted to talk to you about as well. You put out like a Wilderkin for Castle and Crusade, as a supplement for Castle and Crusade, where you include new race and new classes as well, I think, right?
Yeah, I had a couple of subclasses. I guess subclasses. I couldn't. Castles and Crusades doesn't really have that, but I came up with like a class kit, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't put this product out for 5e.
That's right.
From what I understand, that was linked to the OGL debacle. And you said also that the Chronicle of Ares, I believe you're in the process of transferring it to Castle and Crusade as well.
That's right.
That's correct?
Yeah, our first setting book, the whole book, we're converting to Castles and Crusades completely. Mm-hmm. And we're going to reprint that or re-release it in some fashion to go along with that. And everything we do from now on will probably be Castles and Crusades. And it does have to do with the open game license. And just generally, we don't want to have anything to do with Wizards of the Coast anymore. Not just because of the open game license, just because of all the things that they've been doing, just trashing the game and like making all the poor business decisions and attacking the customers. We don't want to be associated with that. Not only that, but looking at the different OSR clones and D&D old school systems and Castles and Crusades, we wanted something that would be more adventurous. Because we like 5th edition, the rule set, but of course it has a lot of problems. We don't need to go into that. Everyone talked about that. The death saves and all that, and some of the stuff it makes it more of a superhero type of game. And Ares is a very high-powered, very high fantasy game. It's certainly not a low fantasy game by any means. Our setting is very high fantasy, but we still wanted to have more of an old school adventure vibe too. So I think Castles and Crusades is a better rule set for that.
And you obviously Chronicle of Ares is a setting book, so you must have definitely an interest for writing lore, writing settings, stuff like that. But you also include classes and races.
Yeah,
that those have to come with rules. What your which is your prefer? Like, which is your prefer? Which one do you prefer writing for? Like, are you more like I assume you were more a setting, a lore guy.
Yeah. Super setting lore guy. And I really like races too. That's we have a ton of them in our stuff, and I always like putting the new races out there. Yeah. As long as they're not dumb. That has to make sense in the world, and I like for our races to be mythological. I don't like for them to just be a costume that you put on top of a human character. It has to have a lot of meaning and deep role-playing opportunities. Where you create the character with this race, you're choosing this for a reason. It's not just because you want to look like this certain way. Mm-hmm. There's role-playing considerations you have to do in there. We write that in all our stuff. Like for our races, we have a class consideration. These races will almost always be this class. Here's the reason why. Here's the reason why you go on the adventure. Here's how you roleplay them and what it means if you're picking them up and bringing them to the table. So all of our stuff has a lot of lore and role-playing ideas built into the text, not just stat blocks. I like doing stat blocks, but I like to also add a lot of flavor and a lot of lore to even the stat blocks and explain like what abilities a race or a monster has, but also like I give it a little flavor, like why is it like that way in this world? How does it interact with other factions and other characters in the world? But we really only included classes because I guess we felt obligated to. Probably our classes I like our classes. We have 3. The Witch, which is kind of mythological, and the Dreamcaller, which is like they summon monsters almost like a Final Fantasy. and we have an alchemist, which is like old school alchemy, traditional alchemy, and hermeticism type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I like them, but I don't really like writing classes that much, to be honest. I just felt like, well, you have to have some concessions. If you're making a big setting guide for D&D, people are going to want new classes. People are going to want to see that. They want to see it. It's a selling point for them. Mm-hmm. You can't just have a book full of just nothing but lore. That can work sometimes, but most people are going to want the crunch. So that's why we include that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I see. Because I was about to ask, like, I guess it's you have a very lore first approach, and then you find some rules that fit the lore, not the other way around, right?
That's right.
Yeah. I want to talk a little more about your writing process. Are you an outline kind of guy, or are you a go with the flow kind of guy?
I'm an outline guy for sure.
Oh, really? I think you're my first one.
Really?
Yeah. Early on, like, I'll go with the flow. So when you approach a project, you're gonna make like those charts, and you're gonna say, I want this. You're gonna have, and especially with a project like Chronicle Virus, when you have like a lot of lore and background and story, because there's a whole world, you plan out all those beat points in advance.
Right. So we like to have a lot of brainstorming sessions about the book that we're working on currently, whatever it might be. And we write down a lot of ideas. They're not organized. So that's kind of a go with the flow type of part, where we come up with a lot of ideas. Today we're going to brainstorm factions. Let's write all the factions that's going to be in this city. But then when we really start to work on the book, we always have to have the outline of the book. And the outline almost looks like the table of contents for the book for us. Mm-hmm. Like, I write the table of contents first, and then that's how I write the rest of the book. I go point by point to each subject that's supposed to be in the book, and I flesh it out. So a big outline guy here. And another thing we do is the map. The map influences how I write as well. I feel like if you're making a setting, especially a fantasy setting, it's very helpful to create or draw the map of the world or the city or the dungeon first. And that way you can start to let the imagination flow, and you can look at the map and you can start fleshing out each area and be like, these mountains will have this, 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 and this. And okay, I drew a forest over here. This can have this, this, and this. And then you can really start to flesh out the world if you have something to look at that kind of gives you a picture in your mind of what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, you can kind of like look at the consideration of like what this geography would have, what implication would this geography have on the world. You mentioned that you like to get your art early, and now you're saying that the map kind of gives you inspiration in a way because you want to populate it. Is there like a piece of art that you receive that is something maybe you didn't have planned, but you say, oh, that's so cool, now I have to make that? Or do you have like generally your idea pretty fixed beforehand?
I'm pretty fixed. Very specific. Yep. I tell my artists, this is what I'm looking for. I usually give them a folder of a ton of references, 20 to 30 reference images. Say, this is what I want for this. And I explain it to them and everything. I'm not super specific. Like, I'm like, this character's hand must be in this position. No, I don't do that. And like, to me, that's kind of dumb. But I give them give the artist a complete impression of what I want to do before they start working on.
And so you give them reference. Do you give them like composition directive, like pauses and poses and stuff like that, or you just like, I want this creature's going to look like that, and then how specific do you get?
What's that? I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit for me.
Oh, sorry. Maybe my internet is. I say, like, how specific do you get? Like, do you give them like direction? Do you just say like give them reference to what the creature is going to look like, or do you go all the way to like, I want them to performing this action, being in that pose, or you say like not like the end look like that, but like you say like, oh, I want him to swing a big axe or kick down a
Yeah.
barrel.
Right. Yeah, sometimes I do that because if I'm looking through the artwork that I've gotten and I have a lot of static characters that are just standing there looking cool or whatever, I start to think, well, I have too many of these. I need some more action-oriented pieces. And that's when I'll go to an artist and be like, hey, I want this next one to be more action. Can you do an action scene? Maybe he's attacking a goblin or something. So I can do that for sure. I do that from time to time. But for the most part, I just say, this is what I want. Because a lot of our artwork is kind of referential artwork. It's just there to give you an impression of what the monsters or characters are supposed to look like. But I do, especially for the big full page pieces that have like set pieces with action, I like to go into more detail for those.
Mm-hmm. Insert name here. Say I'm curious as to the effectiveness using service like Wombo Dream to the art source of our current. Like, I'm not familiar with Wombo. Are you?
Is that AI? I believe that's an AI.
Oh, you think it's an AI? Or maybe I don't know about this one.
Yeah. Wombo is an AI art generator.
Is that something you consider AI art generation, and you just say no, you want to stay away from that?
No, absolutely not. Mm-mm.
No, you're not interested.
I won't touch it. I want artwork that 20 years from now somebody is going to remember they saw this piece of artwork in my book and be like, that was nostalgic, Mm-hmm. Just how you look back at the Larry Elmore art from Dragonlance and be like, I remember this piece of art. This was awesome. You can't, it's not the same with AI. You don't have the connection.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to talk about a bit the process of writing per se. When you sit there and you start like putting words on a page, basically. Or what's your? I don't know if you have like a day job or whatever that suit for you if you want to talk about that. But like what kind of discipline do you put yourself through to actually go out there and actually do the work? Do you keep to a strict schedule? Do you say, I'm going to set the computer when the inspiration come? How do you approach the actual process of putting words on a page?
That's a tough one because it's changed over time. I guess it just has to be, the inspiration just has to strike, I guess. We used to, me and my buddy, we used to watch a lot of fantasy movies to get into the mood and like hype ourselves up and read books and things like that to like really like get pumped for writing. And then I would sit down and I would write for like a few hours a day. That's how we managed to knock out the first book in such a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, we've done 4 books so far, working on our 5th and 6th. Now it's like I don't have as much discipline as I used to. I'm slowing down a little bit. Mm-hmm. I guess that just comes to you get burnt out over time and you got job stuff going on. But normally it would just be like, all right, I get up in the morning and today I feel like working on this. And then I hit the computer and start hammering it out for a few hours. And then I might go a couple of days and not work on it at all. And then the next day I'll be like, okay, I feel better today. And I'll just get back into it. So I don't really have any strict regimen or any kind of like strict discipline. Probably I should, but that's just usually not how I do it.
Mm-hmm. And is there like a specific part of the writing that is necessary, but that you dread, that you say, and that you always like drag your feet to do? That is there like a specific like for me, like when I write rules, it's like a writing example. I hate writing example, but you need them sometime.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I can't stand. So right now I'm working on it's a totally different game. It's a kaiju versus mecha sci-fi RPG, cyberpunk kind of post-apocalyptic war game RPG. Mm-hmm. And because it's a totally new system with totally new ideas and everything, that means I have to be like, what is a role-playing game? How to create a character. And it's like, oh no, I don't want to do. Here's what quote unquote attributes mean. Like, it's like, I hate it, man. It sucks. And I've been thinking about like not even doing that at all. Just making the game as if like you've played a role-playing game before. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, just fuck it. I'm gonna just write this and put a little blurb that says, play this game only if you're familiar with role-playing games. I thought about doing that, but then I know I can't do that because, like, it's a kaiju RPG. So all the Godzilla fans and all these like Pacific Rim people, like anime people who've never played RPGs before in their life, they might see the Kickstarter or the YouTube video for it, and they might want to buy it. And they just want to pick it up. That might be the first time they ever play a role-playing game in their life. So by buying my book, that's my idea anyway. So I have to do that. So I don't look forward to it at all.
That's an interesting consideration because a lot of game nowadays, like, or some game nowadays, like, do skip that part. But oftentimes they are games that are most likely not going to be somebody's first role-playing game. But it's true. If you are going in a specific niche with like the kaiju people, or can be a bit fanatic.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned the Magic the Gathering earlier, like, and we know like a lot of kaiju people bought some specific Magic set because they had Godzilla card in them.
Right.
So yeah, that's an interesting consideration. You have like a suggestion here by Black Lodge Game. I have ChatGPT write that part. That's something you toyed with a bit.
Yeah, I've got ChatGPT 4.0. Mm-hmm. I've messed around with it a little bit.
Yeah,
but I tried to like have it come up with some ideas for factions for the city sandbox that I'm working on, just to get some random ideas.
Yeah.
But for some reason, ChatGPT is a little too woke for me. It's like it'll come up with some factions, and it'll like one of the factions will be like, these are eco-terrorists who are fighting to preserve like the trees or whatever. I'm like, what? Like, no, that's not what I want. And it's like you can kind of tell that there's some influence in ChatGPT that comes out, and you're like, oh, okay. It's like,
there's definitely a bias. Also, yeah. I toyed with it a bit as well, and I found like it's not very creative. It can like give you like something that is functional, like if you just do a report or stuff like that, but it's coming with new idea, not its strength.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely not its strength. But one thing I discovered that I will be using it for, and I struggled with this big time. This is kind of off topic a little bit, but for the kaiju game, we wanted to have, obviously a big chunk of it takes place in Japan or Korea, South Korea. So we wanted to have some Japanese like language in there.
Yep. And
finding somebody who wants to do that for me, it has been next to impossible. So I've found a bunch of Japanese gamers, but for some reason Japanese RPG gamers don't like Godzilla. You would think that they were into it, but they're not. It's really weird to me. So they don't want to help me. And then if I find somebody who's like an English person that is into Japanese, and like as a translator or somebody like that, I'm like, hey, I'm working on a kaiju game. Can you do some Japanese for me? They're like, oh, is this cultural appropriation? I'm like, what do you mean? It takes place in Japan. No, it's not. Oh, you're a white guy. Why are you doing this? Oh my God. And then I have to go through all that. So it's been tough. ChatGPT, on the other hand, I'll tell it to translate something to Japanese. Yep. And not only will it do it perfectly, but it will break down step by step what each little piece of the writing means. Like, okay, I might use it for that for sure.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a I can see that very useful way to get that. Are you sometimes affected by? I want to come back to the kaiju game soon, but let's just finish the topic about the writing. The writer's block, is that something that sometimes if you are affected by that sometime, how do you deal with it? You just like plow through? Do you just like move away? Like, do you go work on something else and come back to how do you deal with it? Because I assume you must have experienced that sometime.
Oh yeah, definitely. I have it right now. The best way for me to get over writer's block is to have some kind of deadline. If I have a deadline that it's like, let's, for example, on the Kickstarter, the last Kickstarter I did was for the Doom That Came to Asteris, which was for our sword and sorcery adventure, Conan-inspired type of adventure. And on Kickstarter, once you set the goal that says, we will deliver the book on June of next year, whatever. It's like, okay, I better not sit there for 3 months and not do anything, because you don't want to be that guy that fucks up with your Kickstarter. So having a deadline is very important. And so that will get me to kick it into high gear. Even if I wait until the very last minute, I'll still kick it into high gear and try and push through and finish it. So yeah, deadline. Number one way to beat writer's block is to have a hard deadline.
And does it work if you set a deadline for yourself? That with like, just, you say, oh, I want to finish that by that date, even if there's no external, like, or then do you have like a problem, take it seriously?
That might work for some people, but not for me. I've got to have some kind of duress, some kind of oppressive force that's like making me do it.
You need to be like accountable to somebody, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Can't disappoint people.
Let's talk about this kaiju mecha game, if you will.
Okay.
I heard you talk about it before, that you've been working on it for a while, and now you just say like, oh, it's an RPG war game. Are you like kind of mixing the two? Is there going to be like more combat, very like oriented with being on a grid, or?
Yeah, it's almost completely combat oriented game, with a lot of wargaming elements, like attacking from different directions and having a lot of different maneuvers and tactical things you can do in combat. And it's campaign based, so like an actual war campaign. Like, you have the map of encroaching enemy forces, and you can take on objectives from your base and that type of thing. But the role playing, if you think about anime, I don't know if you're a big anime fan, like Gundam. No. So, in the anime, like a mecha anime, like Gundam or whatever, yes, there's a lot of combat. But really and truly, like 50% of it is not combat. The pilots they're wandering around the base, interacting with different people. Maybe they uncover some conspiracies. They're training, upgrading their equipment. Maybe you can form like a love triangle. I'm not really focusing on that, but like, so there's going to be, it's mainly the war game outside of the base. And once you're in the base, you can turn it into a role-playing game if you want, because you are a pilot, you are an actual human being that you can explore your surroundings, like that are part of your faction. So I guess it's a combination of the two.
Yeah, I know those shows oftentimes have a lot of intrigue and politics as well.
Right. Yeah.
People you see, like Victor said that he's setting fake deadline for himself, and that works for him. So yeah. No love triangle, your mind, Greg. There you go. So no going outside of a. So now you're writing a game. How different is that experience from writing a lore book, a setting book? How, like, do you find like it was like totally? Like, do you find that there's a lot of carryover?
It's totally different. But in high school, we played a D&D, but at the time we didn't really have like a game store to go to pick up new RPGs. So I actually made a fuck ton of RPGs in high school a long time ago, just for my friends to play through. And they were all kind of like, some of them were D&D ripoffs and some of them were other different things. But I made like a Metroid RPG that was for one player where he could play through it. I made a Jurassic Park was like a survival horror. I made a Alien versus Predator. This was a long time ago, like way before anything. I made a ton of RPGs, so I know a little bit about it. but it's a totally different scenario because you have all these ideas for how to put together the game, but having them come together cohesively into an actual system that functions, that is the big challenge for me. I've got skills over here in combat rules and attribute and ability score rules and how to create the character, and then you have the experience, and you have all these different parts that are floating around. And I have all these documents where I've got ideas for the various parts of the system, but how do I lash that together into a working engine where it all seems like it makes sense and it fits together? That is the major challenge.
How do you approach the writing rule? Are you like a very mathematical guy, or you just like go by feel, do a lot of like testing and come back to it and fiddle around with it?
Yeah, so the number one, I guess the thing that comes into my head first when I'm trying to design rules is how does this feel at the table when you're playing the game? What is the feel that I want? D&D has a specific feel. Mm-hmm. It has a very methodical, medieval combat type of feel where you imagine a knight bashing against another knight with a sword and shield, and it goes back and forth, right? It's got a very kind of turn-based feel to it. And I'm thinking to myself, so if I'm creating a game where you have giant monsters fighting giant robots, does it have the D&D feel? Well, no. It has a different feel. It feels more like professional wrestling to me. Almost like a Street Fighter. And so then what I'll do is I'll go and I'll find examples of games that fit that type of feeling at the table. So like you've got the Street Fighter 2 game, that was a World of Darkness game. That's a good game. And there's like Battletech, of course, is a robot game. And I just try and go and find games that somewhat match what I'm looking for the style. And then I can get a little bit of inspiration from that and start to develop the system to try and recreate like that feeling for the players at the table and see if it's fun or not.
Mm-hmm. We insert name here. Got a question for you. As the process of creating a publicly marketable RPG at all tarnish your personal enjoyment of RPG?
No, not at all. Not even close. Not even close.
Did it make it more fun? Do you feel like you get more into it now?
Yeah, it's more fun. Yeah. Because all of the IRE stuff that's in our books is actual campaigns and adventures that I ran as a DM for my players. And so that we use actually playing the game for the basis for creating new writing. So that's super fun for us because like actually playing the game is the first step in like creating the next book. So that makes it a lot more fun for us actually. And my players' characters, the characters that they had in our campaigns are NPCs in the book, and they get super excited about that.
Yeah, and you made to begin with something that you wanted to play yourself,
right.
Yeah, so I guess that must have contributed as well. When you playtesting, because now you're working on a system, and you say, oh, okay, we need to have like rules that work together, that mesh together, that get the right feel. How do you proceed about with the playtesting? Do you have your own group that you kind of, in a way, force through it? Do you send it outside to other people you trust? Do you make it like publicly available? How do you go about the testing of those games, the mechanics that you develop?
I've done a little playtesting with some of our buddies on the Basic Experts Gilded server. Mm-hmm. And basically, because the system is not complete, I put together a couple of like stat blocks for characters just based on what I know, based on what I've got so far. Just put together some rough stat blocks and then see if I can find a couple of guys to throw together a combat scenario, just a quick combat scenario, monster versus mecha pilot or whatever. And that was pretty fun. But I think I haven't really done any playtesting in a long time because I've changed up some of the rules. I'm kind of shifting to a different direction. what I think I'm going to have to do is go to the actual local game store. And this is something that I actually hate to do. I don't like going to the local game store because, believe it or not, I don't like hanging out with nerds. Me being the biggest nerd that ever lived, you'd think that that seems hypocritical, and maybe it is. There's just something about like game store people. I don't know. I don't feel like want to waste my whole Saturday hanging out there. But like, that's what I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna have to print out like some reference documents and go down there and start up a table and get some guys and be like, hey, who wants to test out this kaiju game? And we're going to be, speaking of hard deadlines, we're going to a convention at the end of July where I'm going to be play testing that as well. And like, it's not just a regular play test. It's like some kind of contest where these other indie game developers are going to be showing off their games. And like, so now I'm like, oh, I want to be voted the best. So now I have to really work hard on it to like get that ready for that convention. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think live playtesting with strangers is probably going to be the most helpful. Because if a random stranger doesn't think it's fun, or they're confused by something, or they're just sitting there like, oh, this is lame, like, I have a problem.
Yeah. Do you sometimes make some playtesting where you remove yourself and you just say like, here's the rule, try to figure it out, try to play, and I'm just gonna sit back and look at you, or are you always involved in it?
I haven't done any specific playtesting like that, but for my books, I always send it to people to look over. Like with the Wilderkin thing, I sent it to several Castles and Crusades guys who are super big into it, and I want you to look this over and tell me what you think about the rules and give me some suggestions. Basic stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They didn't playtest, but they look it over. And they come back to me with ideas, and then I make some changes. But no, I haven't actually done like any. What's that?
Did you get some good feedback from that?
Oh yeah, tons of feedback. Mm-hmm. Some not so good, because oftentimes people are, believe it or not, people are too nice, and they don't want to tell you what they actually think about the thing.
Yeah.
And this is wonderful. I really want to play as a Wilderkin. Oh, I really enjoy the lore. Okay, thank you very much. But what do you think about these rules here? And like, I'll point to some like Castles and Crusades rules. Oh, it's okay. It's like, no, do you have any more feedback? Like, you have to kind of coax people into like giving their honest opinion sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I often see like people like complaining that, people say, yeah, I'm interested in your playtest, and then like you send them the document and you never hear from them again.
Yeah, that happens a lot too.
Yeah. So what is you want to tell what this convention is? That something that anybody can attend, this convention you're going to July?
Yeah, it's the Southern Fried Gaming Expo in Atlanta, Georgia. It's on July 27th through the 30th.
If somebody is around and want to give a shot at this early shot at this Kaiju game, they could go there, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have all our books for sale there too.
Oh yeah, is that something you've done already? Going to convention to sell book?
Mm-hmm, yeah, we've been I think three conventions so far. This will be our fourth one. Very successful every time.
Very successful every time. How do you approach it? Do you like how do you know? Do you come in with like pre-printed book, and then you have like to put out this display, and how do you go about knowing how many to bring? We fill up our car with as much as we can, and then just bring in however much we can carry and set up a table, and we have our books neatly laid out. Mm-hmm. And we made a big vinyl banner for Dueling Dragon Adventures. We're going to have even more banners that we've got planned for other stuff for this next one. And then there's two types of ways to engage with these people at conventions. If you're sitting there with your books, you're trying to get people to come take a look. Most of the people there are going to be interested in role-playing games anyway. Mm-hmm. Some people are not. So they're going to just randomly stop by. And what that usually happens is somebody will just
slowly saunter by the table and they'll look at it and they won't say anything to you at all. They're just a silent creeper, just a kind of a silent lurker that's kind of like browsing. And that's when you have to engage and be like, hey, do you play D&D? Do you like blah, 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 blah? Okay, yeah, I like it. We've sold so many books that way. Just be like, oh, okay. Like just some random guy that we convinced him to buy the book. And we're like, hey, if you like Dragonlance and Tolkien, then you'll look at this. And like, we'll open up the book and we'll show him the art and be like, check it out. Look what we've got here and here and here. Mm-hmm. He'll buy it. That's one way. And another way, sorry to get into the convention stuff.
No,
just going on. And then another way is people who are not about to stop by, you can be assertive. If you see some nerds walking by that have like fucking, I don't know, like Final Fantasy t-shirts or Final Fantasy 14 or World of Warcraft t-shirts on, or maybe even like a D&D shirt on. We always look for the D&D shirt nerds. But hey, you, just like call them out. But hey, do you guys play D&D? And they'll just stop and turn and be like, yeah, we play D&D. It's like they were completely oblivious to your presence until you said something. It's like they were just going to walk by, but you can like actually be assertive and be like, here, come here. Hey, you, come over here. Like, you know, and like, then like explain their books. Like, well, I've had whole groups of like 5 or 6 nerds who were there but they all bought a copy of the book. Like, you know, just because I called them out and like made them come over there and take a look at it.
That's interesting. Like, I'm very interesting to go into that angle because you're my first guest that actually did the convention route. Most of them, I guess, were European or not in the US. But your books, you when you went to Kickstarter, you had like an offset printing run.
That's right, for the first one. Mm-hmm.
For the first one, so you had a garage full of books.
Well, not anymore. We've sold almost all of them.
Almost all of them?
Yeah, we went to Lithuania.
Mm-hmm.
Standard Impressia was the name of the company. They actually printed the Alien RPG, if you know what that is.
Yep.
And we got 500 copies of that for a very cheap price and got it shipped over here. But that was cheap by, if you have Kickstarter money, $6,000, you know? It's like, I doubt I'll be able to afford to print it again. So that's why I'm saying once this batch is gone, it's probably going to be gone for a while. Once we finish a Castles and Crusades version, we'll probably see if I can do another Kickstarter and do another print run. But yeah, we did offset printing. And ever since then, we've done more local printing, you know, just in batches of 25 to 50, you know, however much we need it for our other books. Yeah.
I see. So this is what you're bringing to the convention there, and just basically being a salesman in a way. Not being afraid to call out to people.
Right. And like, I don't know if you can, the European etiquette is probably quite different at that. You know, in the United States, you hear about, you know, the Southern charms, the Southern hospitality. Like, hey, buddy, come here. How you? Come over here and look at our book. It's like, you know, I don't know if that's not quite the same thing in a lot of European countries. I think it's a different type of thing. You can't just yell at somebody and tell them to come over here. Right.
That'd be an interesting consideration.
Yeah.
Even there in Canada, I don't know how that would work, but
yeah, it works.
Yeah. So now the next thing we can expect from Dueling Dragon Adventure, like you said, you're in the process of converting your coronavirus to Castle and Crusade.
Yeah.
Are you? And you said you're gonna maybe make another Kickstarter for this one, or?
Yeah, I'll probably do a Kickstarter for that just to print it out, just to get another print run of that. I wish I could have done a second print run of our first book. And this goes back to the first part of our conversation we were talking about at the first Kickstarter, some of the mistakes we made.
Yep.
And mistakes we made included not hiring an editor, first of all, because even though we had a Kickstarter, we didn't have the money to hire an editor. So we tried our very best, but the first book is riddled with mistakes. There's a lot of grammatical and typos in there. A lot of the rules are incorrect. We got some 5th edition rule stuff wrong. We've tweaked a lot of different things in the first book, like over the past year, 2 years. So the PDF is up to date. Like the PDF is like got new artwork. It's got all fixed grammatical stuff and no typos. Like the rules are clean and like fixed up. But that first book is rough, man. It's like a 1.0 version for sure. And so I almost feel embarrassed to sell the book, to be honest, because it's so rough around the edges compared to the stuff we do now. Like the last 3 books that we print out now, which is the paperback books, the Asterisk and the Wilderkind and the Shadows of Pathology, we don't have any problems with them at all. Those are all up to date. You know, we print those out. No errata sheets or anything we have to put in there. But the first book is rough. So that was a mistake we made, is rushing that out and not having it be as polished as we would like. Mm-hmm. And another mistake I screwed up with on the Kickstarter for the first book is underestimating international shipping. And that killed us bad. Yeah. Really, really bad. Because I thought it would only cost like $15 to ship the book to Europe. And it ended up costing $45 per book. Yeah. So I ended up having to shell out like $3,000 out of my own pocket just to ship to the people. And we went way over budget, and the Kickstarter money didn't cover it at all. That was a rough time too. Like, you can get bit in the ass hard with Kickstarter. You have to be very careful. Like, you might make $15,000, but that doesn't go as far as you think it's going to go. It goes quick.
Yeah, this is always something like when people look at the very successful Kickstarter and they say, "Oh, now you got all this money." Well, if there's a book to be delivered, like you're just gonna make like maybe a few bucks for every books. If you're lucky, you make something at all. Yeah. Because now a lot of people, like, because of shipping since the lockdown, stuff like that, have go up so much. Is nowadays, like, people like often charge shipping separately after, like, in a backer kit. Like, is that something that you consider doing in the future?
Yeah, that's what we're going to do in the future for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's now like it kind of sucks because when you're in Europe or even Canada, shipping becomes so expensive.
Yeah, it's like the first Kickstarter we did, I had like 100 international customers, which was, and then the second one we did, I made them pay $45 for shipping separately. Guess how many I had after that? Like 5. I went from having 100 international backers to like 5 or 6 because nobody wanted to pay that much money for that. I don't blame them. You know, it's pretty dumb.
Have you considered like hiring like there's those fulfillment company that instead of like having the books in your shipped to your garage and putting them in an envelope yourself or in box yourself, is that something you did? Did you sit there like, really?
We did it all ourselves and still do.
And you still do?
Yeah, we still do.
So it's really like, in a way, a home business that you sit there and...
Yeah, a home business on top of our normal day job.
Is that something you consider doing, like trying to hire somebody else to do this part for you? Maybe like they can look into if they can get better deal for shipping or stuff like that.
Like, you know, I haven't really looked into it. Probably wouldn't be able to afford it. I have looked on print on demand. You know, we could put our book up on Lulu print on demand, which is pretty popular, or even have Drive-Thru RPG do it. But to be honest, the cost is insane. For the first book, if I want high quality color printing for print on demand, it's like they will charge $60 for the book.
Yeah.
$70. Nobody's going to pay $70 for the book. Like, that's way too much. Compared to Lithuania, charge me $10 for the book. You know, I'd rather find a way to have him ship me 500 more copies for $10 a piece than to try and charge somebody $70 for one copy. It's too much. But there's companies like BackerKit, which I think you might have mentioned.
Yeah, but I didn't mention them, but like that's the kind of thing I get into. Yep.
but they will not touch you unless you are forecast to make like $50,000, at least 50,000. Like they will not even talk to you. They don't consider you worth their time. I reach out to them, both of our Kickstarters, and they're like, well, how many emails do you have on your list? I was like, I don't know, like 500. Like, come back to us when you have 5,000 email addresses on your list. I'm like, okay, fine. They're very hard to work with.
Victor says he's sticking with print on demand because he cannot afford anything else. That's one way to do it, especially when you're independent. And he had, unless a publisher snatches me. Is that something that you consider? Like you had like this book idea. Did you consider approaching another company, or you always had the idea, no, we're gonna do it ourselves?
I wish I could. I really wish I could talk to Troll Lord Games because they print their own stuff. Mm-hmm. I move into Castles and Crusades. I wish Troll Lord Games would pick me up, you know, and print the Iris stuff in Castles and Crusades. That would be a godsend. But for some reason, I don't think that they will. I haven't talked to them about it yet because all I have is a little Wilderkin thing, which is kind of an experiment. It's not like a major standalone, you know, setting book or anything. But once we have our main setting book, I may see what they say about that. Mm-hmm. I would love a publisher. That would solve all my problems, as long as it's not somebody who's going to try and change it.
That's the thing. That's always the risk and the drawback. Doing it yourself give you a lot of freedom in some aspect, but put you out of shackle in another.
Right.
Yeah. Is there anything else you would like to maybe something that you want to announce? Because like we talked about the upcoming I was about to say translation to Castle and Crusade, but like the conversion, that's the word I was looking for. And
right, yeah.
Is there something else you would like, another project that you have in mind, you're working on, or something that you say, one day I'll do that, I'm not yet ready to work on that? Is there like you have like a dream kind of an idea in the back of your mind that you're still trying to play with a bit?
Well, the projects that we've got right now are going to take a long time to complete. Mm-hmm. But we have there are infinite possibilities with Iris. We have ideas for expansions for the rest of our life. Like we'll never, ever not have an idea for an expansion for the setting. It's a very comprehensive setting. But right now we had the conversion. That's actually, the conversion is number 3 on our list. That's at the bottom. Number 1 is we're working on a city sandbox, open sandbox adventure for Iris, for Castles and Crusades, which is going to be a massive city with a lot of factions and, you know, things to do in there. Our first attempt at an open sandbox. Our other adventures are very linear adventure modules. So that will be cool. And it's going to have a gothic kind of satanic panic flair, like 1970s style fantasy, like very like dark and grim and gritty like feel to it. So that's our number 1 thing we're working on. And then number 2 is a kaiju game. And then a distant third is the Castles and Crusades conversion. Because I feel like if we sit down for a couple of weeks, we can knock that out. Like there's no question, because we have races and stuff we have 3 classes, we have races and monsters. I don't think it would take too long to knock that out. But the idea is like I have to sit down and do it, and it's a pain in the ass. So like that's the only obstacle.
So that come back to, you know, what we talk about, like the thing you dread and thing that you like and thing that it's more fun to create something new, I guess, than to revisit something. And anything else you would like us to discuss, or that you want to add, or something that we should have covered that we didn't touch? Like I said, I make those videos for people that want to put something out, because I often say like every other GM got some kind of like project, a system, a setting, an adventure they would want to put out. Very few people actually do. So I make those talk for people that actually did put something out, so they can share their knowledge and the wisdom that they acquire doing so.
Yeah.
Is there any other advice you'd like to share? Or
just the advice that I kind of touched on at the beginning. Number 1, have a clear and well-defined vision that makes you stand out in a sea of competitors. That's hard to do sometimes. If you are making a setting book or an adventure book, and you sit down and you ask the question, why would anyone buy this book over the Forgotten Realms? And if you can envision yourself with your book on a game store shelf next to the Forgotten Realms, and you've got a nerd standing there, what's going to make him pick that up over Forgotten Realms? Like, ask yourself that question seriously. That's the number one thing you should do. Number two, make a good video. Find somebody to make you a video with a lot of cool artwork, and that will take you far.
There's a comment there we can address as well. Like Max from Legion Admit say, I was told my opinion don't matter because I don't create any product. But I guess
who said that?
Is that you? I don't know. No, but I guess that's somebody that who is creating product. I'm sure you're always happy to hear the opinion of people. No.
What's that?
I'm sure. Like as somebody that is putting product out, because we talked about it as well. Like you want to hear the opinion of people because you want your product to make.
Who said that your opinions don't matter because you don't create any product? That's dumb. That's like the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
If it's a creator that told him that, I would be very skeptical of the product he puts out, because like, how are you gonna get better if you don't listen to opinion of the consumer in a way, or the people that, especially somebody that do look through a lot of product.
Yeah.
I thank you for joining me, Greg. I think we cover about the topic I usually like to address on this subject. So I put all the link to your YouTube channel, the link to your product, to your website, or in the description below. I need to change the title.
Thank you.
I got you. I copied the thing and I didn't change the name. I'm gonna go back and edit that. I'm very sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you around. I know you often join Victor and John on Natural One, sometime on the Dutch Oven as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, thanks for having me on. You'll see me around. I'm in chats and I'm all over the place, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's thank you very much, and good luck with all your next project, and good luck with this convention and this playtest with your KG game.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Have a good one. Take care, everybody. Thank you for joining in chat, and thank you for the people at home that watch later on. Bye.